This is Support is Sexy, episode 353, with Monique Greenwood, founder and CEO of Akwaaba Inns and star of the new Oprah Winfrey Network show, Checked In. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And I know I say this with all of our guests because I am truly excited to have all of our guests here. But I am really thrilled to have our guest today, Monique Greenwood, not only because she's a fabulous boss woman, she owns her own company, her own empire, Akwaaba Inns, which is several inns up and down the East Coast. But Monique is very special to me because she is the woman who really gave me my break as a young, eager journalist at Essence magazine when I wanted so badly to become entertainment editor. Monique allowed me to present myself, to present my ideas, gave me that position, and really was a mentor to me very early on in my career. So I'm happy about speaking to her about that. But also, you ever have those bosses that you just have 1,000 questions for them? I didn't get to ask 1,000, but I got to ask a lot of questions of her about her career as a journalist, but also the transition to becoming an entrepreneur. She had a big position, editor-in-chief of Essence. What was it like to walk away? A lot of us have, whether we have quote unquote big jobs or any position, reinventing, making that change, making that choice. If you have to make that choice, whether it's a both and or an either or, we talk about that. A lot goes into it. And I've always wanted to know that from Monique. So this was the perfect opportunity to ask her those questions. I'm also excited because Monique's new show, Checked In, is premiering tonight, if you're listening to this in real time, November 21st, 10 p.m. Eastern on the Oprah Winfrey Network. So not only will you have the benefit of my questions, but you'll get to see her family, and her staff in action at the inns and how she runs her business and makes it all work. So what else you'll learn from Monique on this episode is how to know when a step back is worth the risk. Also, the importance of being an intrapreneur in your day job. The moment you have to make a decision between your dream job or your dream business. The importance of creating generational wealth, something that's very important to Monique and that also goes into the show. Why game changers must be willing to accept change. The key ingredient for creating any successful business. How to qualify your customers, and the value of legacy. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. It was so much fun for me and truly an honor. And I'm so excited about Monique's new show, Checked In, which you'll hear all about in this episode. So without further ado, Monique Greenwood. So Monique, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to chat with you on Support is Sexy today.
Thank you, Elaine. I am honored to be here.
Absolutely. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
You know, I think that I've been an entrepreneur since I was a young girl because if I could find a way to make $1, I was down for doing that, whether it was babysitting or tutoring. But I really fell in love with the concept once I learned the story of my grandfather, who started one of Washington, D.C.'s oldest Black-owned businesses. And it was a moving and storage company that was born out of racial hatred, to be honest with you, because he had a small corner grocery store. And when a local merchant complained that he didn't want to have his groceries delivered in the same truck with the Black man's groceries, if you can believe that, my grandfather, he could have gotten angry. He could have complained to my grandmother. He could have called his boys. Lots of things he could have done, but instead he got smart and got innovative and purchased his own truck, at that time pulled by horses, and picked up his own groceries. And he thought, what will I do with this vehicle when I'm not getting groceries? And so he started to haul furniture and trash. And that then was the birth of Greenwood's Transfer Moving and Storage Company. And so I always knew my father working on the big truck, hauling furniture. And basically he was a moving man because he sold his share of the business to my aunt. And once I realized that she had a big old house with a big old swimming pool and big diamond earrings, and we
You're like, what does she do?
Right. I was like, wait, we have that, and we don't have that. We're 7 people living in a 3-bedroom house. And it became very clear is because she was an entrepreneur. She was running the business, and my father and his brother had sold their share to her, and they had jobs, and she had a company. And I thought, I'd rather go that route. And so even though I've had wonderful, wonderful jobs in my professional career where I've been the employee and helped to build someone else's business, I've always tried to have some kind of business on the side of my own. And once it became clear that I had to make a decision between a job and a business that I was building, I chose the business that I was building because I always remembered my aunt who was running the business, and I used to call her Alexis Carrington Colby.
Yeah, right.
Dynasty, because her earrings look like chandeliers to me.
Right.
So, that's how I got to this place where I am right now.
Do you remember about how old you were when you sort of had that realization, or was it over time as you saw the family dynamic change? Were you born, or were you already old enough to know when they sold their share and that kind of thing?
No, I wasn't, and I really didn't really know the whole story about my family's business and about my father's role in it, and what my aunt had done until I was probably just out of college.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were in college at Howard, let us mention, right? When you were in college at Howard, did you? What were you studying at that time? You weren't thinking about entrepreneurship then, right?
No, I was a journalism major, and I had my sights set on becoming editor-in-chief of Essence, believe it or not. And my major was journalism. My minor was fashion. And I, wrote everything that I could about fashion for anybody who would publish it. And that was my that was my dream job. And I ended up being fortunate and blessed enough to have that job.
What was it about Essence at that time that made you, I should say, really want to be there?
Well, Essence was the magazine on my coffee table from the time I was maybe 14 that proclaimed me beautiful as a Black woman. And my mother got the magazine. I would go through the pages of the magazine, and I just loved everything about it. And I think it was the first time that I remembered seeing anybody who looked remotely like me on the cover of a magazine. I think prior to wanting to do that, I wanted to be a news anchor. And someone told me early on that, they are sometimes just professional readers. You have to really know how to go get the story and then deliver the story. So doing print journalism versus broadcast journalism was the recommendation that I followed. But it was always about Essence. And once I entered the world of work as a journalist, I would go to fashion shows and cover the collections, and rarely saw anybody else who looked like me, except for these 4 beautiful women who sat on the front row, or at least the second row, and they were all from Essence magazine. Mm-hmm. So I was even more determined that that's where I needed to be.
How did you get that first job at Essence? What was that first job, and what was your journey like to get that first job?
So my first job at Essence was the style director. And that job happened because Susan Taylor, the iconic editor of the magazine, had published a book, and the local bookstores in my area in Brooklyn wanted to host a book signing for her, but all of their shops were too small to be able to accommodate the large audience they expected. And I was already running my first bed and breakfast at that time, and they called and asked if they could host it at the inn. And I said, absolutely. And so Susan flowed in, with her
She
drape.
floated in, yes.
Yes. And so I was determined to give her a full tour of the bed and breakfast. And I don't think she tells the story that it was the last thing she wanted to do because she was exhausted and she had just come, from another signing. She was on book tour. And by the time we got to the top of the stairs of the mansion, she turned to me and she said, "My sister, we need you at Essence."
Mm-hmm.
That began the journey. And so I left my job at the time as editor and associate publisher of a children's fashion trade publication to come to Essence. And it wasn't even a lateral move. It kind of was a step down, both in title and in pay, but it got me to the place I always wanted to be, writing for the people I always wanted to write for. And so I went there with the goal of not being in that position for too very long, and ended up having four positions at Essence over a period of 6 years, culminating with the editorship of the magazine.
Tell us about that moment of knowing that, excuse me, tell us about that moment of knowing that it's worth it, or worth the risk at least, to take the position that might be lower than what you're doing, or take the money that's less than what you're doing. Just for women listening who might be in some sort of situation where they're considering something and thinking, oh, but that's a step back. What did you think about during that moment?
I think that I realized that was a temporary situation. And, that requires a certain amount of confidence and faith and strategy. To be able to say, okay, I can live on less, and I've never been caught up in titles, so that didn't matter to me. I just have to love what I do. But I can live on less, because ultimately I can turn this into more. And so that was my thought process, and it was worth the risk.
Mm-hmm. So when you were at Essence and had this idea of eventually becoming the editor-in-chief and having these several different positions, how did you work your magic, I would say, while you were there? What were the things that were important to you to make yourself a standout when you were at Essence? Other than, I already know the obvious, but tell everyone who doesn't already know you how fantastic you are.
No, I think the first thing is to be an intrapreneur. And I think that means that you're going to be innovative, and you're going to run whatever aspect of somebody else's business as if it were your own, but with respect for the fact that it's not. So, it's a delicate balance. You want to make yourself invaluable. You want to manage up, down, and across, so that you gain the respect and confidence of everybody involved in the team to get the work done. And once you've done that, you also have to be a risk taker in terms of maybe you'll volunteer again to do something that's not your job. And I'm putting air quotes around that, because a lot of people, will say that, well, that's not my job. Mm-hmm. Or, well, that's not my job. Well, no, if that's the job you want, how do you make that your job? And how do you use that so that people know that you're capable of doing more and that you want to do more? So, it's a constant consciousness about what your intention is, and making sure that other people have some sense of what your goals are, and asking for what you want. And sometimes with younger people, they ask very, very quickly, maybe before they kind of earn their stripes. And that can be troublesome. But I always think it's good to say, this is what my goal or my intention is. What would I need to do to make that happen? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then they'll tell you what you need to do. They may tell you how long it's going to take for you to do it. And then you move in that direction.
I will tell you that it's interesting. I don't know if you remember this. You have a good memory. But with me working for you as entertainment editor at Essence, for everyone listening who doesn't know that, which was an amazing opportunity that you gave me, which I appreciate to this day. But I remember one of the things that you shared with me was the importance of me sort of coming out of my shell. You didn't use those words, but, I'm a quiet person, and I don't consider myself quiet, but definitely shy, I should say, but definitely quiet. And you encouraged me, or basically told me that this is a job that requires you to not behave as though you're afraid to interact with people and that kind of thing. And I don't know if you know this, but sort of created this other persona for myself when I had to go to these events and different things. Like, I have to be able to do this, but you gave me a chance. But as you said, it was me finding out what do I need to do in order to do this job and presenting. I remember creating a section like, this is what I would do or what it would look like if I were to become entertainment editor.
And I remember you did that.
You remember that?
Absolutely. I remember being extremely impressed by that. and that's the kind of bold move I'm talking about. You know, you don't shove it at someone and say, hey, this is what this magazine should look like, or this is what this section should look like. You say, listen, I had some idle time and I was working on some things, and I said, I just had a good time playing around with this. I want to just let you take a look at this and let me know what you think. Mm-hmm. When you approach it that way, people are very, very receptive. So, and I'm interested to know, Elaine, so when you had to put on that different persona, did she have another name other than Elaine? Who did you become?
I didn't know about the other name, the Beyonce Sasha Fierce thing, but right. But I'm telling you, I tell people it's funny, I get to say this now, young people that I talk to about that, especially when they feel, I'm scared to go up to people, or I'm scared to, don't think of it as you're still being yourself, but sometimes you have to create this other person that is the magazine editor who goes to the events alone, which I did a lot of, and travel alone and go up to people and don't take things personal. I just had a whole thing that I did so that I didn't sink back into this sort of be my quiet in the corner self. It changed me overall, that experience.
Wow.
Yeah. So now when you mentioned that when you showed Susan around, obviously you already had the bed and breakfast. So how long had you had your business while being a journalist at another company at that time, but before you made that move to Essence? How long had you had the first bed and breakfast in Bed-Stuy?
So I opened Akwaaba Mansion in Bed-Stuy in 1995, and I didn't leave. I left Essence in 2001. So I'm not sure how to do the math on that.
So about 6 years you had is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
7 years, maybe 7 years.
So you had a few years before you started at Essence.
Absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So then tell us about the moment when you've risen to this position that you dreamt about, becoming the editor-in-chief of Essence, which is no small feat. Tell us about the moment then when you finally decided to make a choice between running this esteemed magazine and continuing your career as a journalist, and then running your business and your own dream. Right.
So that was a very difficult place to be, to have to choose between, two things I really, really loved, but in the middle was me. And that's who I wasn't loving at the time. Mm. And so the choice had to be made, because I was very committed to being, a great editor and a great businesswoman, a great wife, mother, community leader, church going girl, all of that. And I wasn't really committed to me. And so I got to a place where, quite honestly, I was jealous of the guests who were staying in my bed and breakfast, because I would come home late in the evening from work and they'd be sitting by my fireplace, sipping my tea, get ready to soak in my jacuzzi. And that was my bad attitude. And I would literally have to fix my face as I peered through the windows and saw them, so that I could walk in with a smile and greet them and say, how y'all doing? And all of that, when I was really jealous of them. And so I realized that I had to make a decision, that something had to go. And at the end of the day, I am so about legacy building that I realized that I could not leave a job for my daughter, but I could leave her a business and a portfolio of real estate. And so if it came down to the job and to the business that I was creating, the business was going to win. And so I left with the knowing that I was trying to set something up for my daughter to pass on to her, that she can then pass on to her daughter, so that we can start to create generational wealth, and so that my great-great-granddaughter, who's yet to be born, will know who I am and what I stood for and what I was able to build. And that means everything to me.
Hmm. Now, a lot of our listeners are women who are either just starting their businesses or some are reinventing. So they may have had a career for a certain amount of time and reinventing for whatever reason or choosing a different path, as you just mentioned there. Now, you have such a big reason for why you decided to eventually make that change. But what would you tell women listening that they need to think about consider, or just really affirm themselves that it's okay to make a change no matter how late it is in the game, or seemingly late it is in the game, or how much time you spent with one career and now you're deciding to do something else? What are the
Yeah.
things that they may not have the legacy idea in mind, but what is it do you think they should consider?
Well, I think any woman who wants to be a game changer has to be able to accept change,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's basically inevitable. And if you don't change, you need to question yourself about whether you're stuck, because we get in a comfortable space and we oftentimes are just stuck. And listen, women, especially Black women, we wardrobe our hair. Last time I saw you, Elaine, you had locks. Maybe now you got short red hair, and we
We
you
know
know
about change.
we know about change, and sometimes change is thrust upon us. It may not even be our decision to
Right.
change, but we need to make sure that we are able emotionally and skillfully to pivot. And it's those who can pivot in their professional lives that I think become successful, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's some people who have a great business idea and won't step out and develop that because they've got what they consider to be, and I'm putting air quotes again, a good job,
Mm-hmm.
and they think that that's more stable. And I'm just going, really? How can that be? Because somebody else determines whether you have that job. So how is that stability? So yeah, I think you just have to you have to embrace change, as long as that change is taking you in the right direction, and the right direction is the one that you set forth, the one that you say is the direction that you're going to move in.
Speaking about that, in your book, Having What Matters, you spoke about women defining success for themselves and what that looks like for themselves. So what would you say then success looks like for you at this stage in your life?
Wow, that's constantly evolving as well. You know, Professional success for me at this stage in my life means that, work as I've always known it is optional. To me, that's what success would look like for me.
Mm,
So I'm the hardest working woman I know.
me
I'm gonna
too.
just
You're the
oh,
hardest worker. You're the hardest working woman I know.
so I'm just gonna say that right up front. And I love work, but I also think that success would mean that that work is on my own terms, and that work is optional. So that's what it would look like for me right now.
Now, over the past 15 years, you've done a lot of work with growing Aquaba from the location in Brooklyn that we already mentioned to 4 locations now, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
including Aquaba, DC, Aquaba, Cape May. I've been to all of these. Aquaba, Cape May. I haven't been to Noble Lane yet. That's on my
Yes.
list.
That's
Aquaba,
our new.
that's your newest one. So, what would you say then, speaking of success, has been your key to success, especially in the hospitality space, as a woman, a Black woman who opens these exquisite locations for people to spend some time?
Oh, wow. I think so many things contribute to that success, and to that blessing. Um, I think the first thing would be, having had the good fortune of identifying something that people need and want. I think when people don't do well in business is basically because they haven't come up with a product or service that people are willing to pay money for. So you got to solve a pain in order for a business to make sense. So you're not selling people what you want them to buy, but you're selling them what they need. And I think I was able to see that in such a high pressure, high tech world, that people just need some high touch.
Mm.
And that's what we specialize in, and there's nothing we won't do short of something illegal, to um, to deliver um, to deliver that high touch and that experience that stays with people far after they leave. So that if a guy wants to propose to his girlfriend, I mean, we're just the folks to make that happen in a very romantic way that would make it absolutely almost impossible for her to say no. We love that challenge. If if you're coming trying to figure it out, it could be many things, but let's say whether you should leave that job or should leave that man or should leave that um, that bad situation. We want to create the space where you can now hear your own voice tell you exactly what you need to do. And that only happens when you stop and you get quiet. Maybe you're going to take a massage. Maybe you're going to sit by the reflective pool. Maybe you're going to take a walk through nature. All of those are the things that we're going to help you plan and help you and suggest to you to get the outcome that you're looking for. And these things happen in a night. They happen in a weekend, and that's all the time we have. But we're going to do everything we can for the time the guests are with us, so that it's an unforgettable experience.
And I think it's powerful what you said about as a businesswoman, sort of looking at what people need or what you feel like people need, and then creating that. Because I know with Akwaaba, when you started the first one in Brooklyn, everyone wasn't as happy, or everyone didn't understand the vision when you were creating what you felt the neighborhood needed at that time.
Yeah, I mean, you use the word vision, and I think that's important, that we have to be visionaries. Instead, a lot of people looked at me as if I have three eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But that third eye is the eye of vision. It's the ability to see the possibility. So if you're not looking through a third eye, you're probably blinded to some real opportunities and possibilities. In my case, with the first location in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, if Brooklyn were a city unto itself, it'd be the fourth largest city in the country. Back in 1995, when we started the bed and breakfast, there were no major hotels in Brooklyn. Can you imagine the fourth largest city in the country, if it were one? No hotels. So people who were visiting with family and friends who lived in the community had to stay either at an airport hotel or they stay in Manhattan, and they spend half of their time visiting on a subway back and forth or in a cab. And so our first target audience for folks who would stay at the Brooklyn location were the family and friends of people who lived there. Because again, in Brooklyn, folks have small apartments. So you couldn't just put up 3 folks in your place. You had no place for them to sleep.
Right.
And so, we thought, okay, there's a pain. Here's one that we can solve. And then we thought, well, okay, we only had at the time, we had 4 guest rooms, but we only had 2 bathrooms. And while that might fly at European bed and breakfast inns, it doesn't work for Americans. We want our own ensuite bathroom. Mm-hmm. And so because I only have 4 guest rooms and only 2 bathrooms, I had to figure out, okay, so how do I get the maximum occupancy of the 4 rooms with folks who are going to share bathrooms? And so it became clear, okay, how about let's market to the churches and the funeral homes? Because in that case, we're going to get families who may be coming in for a wedding at the church or a funeral at the church. And of course, the same thing with the funeral home. So family members won't mind sharing the bathroom.
Oh, with smart.
Or Uncle Charlie. Right. So that was a big part of who we were going to go after initially. And initially, I kept the day job while I was trying to build the business. And I think sometimes people need to think about it. I don't like to get people too fired up about being an entrepreneur, although I'm very fired up about that topic, because I don't want people to go and quit their jobs before they're ready.
Right.
Before they've stepped up the next situation. So in my case, I still had my day job and I was running the bed and breakfast on the side, and I would pre-qualify the caller on the other line for a reservation to find out what brought them to me, why they were coming. If they were coming on a Tuesday night because it was their wedding anniversary, I would not take that guest. And I would just say, oh, I'm so sorry, we are fully booked. because I knew I couldn't deliver for them the experience that they would want because I had to get to work on Wednesday morning. I couldn't sit around and, take care of them.
Oh, very interesting. So you knew what you were turning down based on what you could deliver at that time, which isn't always easy to do. Sometimes you're thinking you just
Absolutely.
want to get people in there, right?
No, because your reputation is everything. So you
Mm-hmm.
may make money on that particular guest, but they're not going to go and get you 5 more guests because they're not going to go and rave about that experience because it's not the one that they would want or the one that you want to deliver. So, we took those people on the weekends, no problem. I was there. I could cater to them. If they were coming during the week for business, then I would take that reservation because they were going to be on the same kind of time clock that I was on. So I could get home, before they got home. And they would never even know that I wasn't there all day, it just in case they needed me, So
Mm-hmm.
I would have to, choose your customer. Not everybody is meant to be your client. You got to choose the clients that you can satisfy and that are not going to create stress for you to satisfy them.
So smart. And that's whether you have a day job or continuing your business in any case, right?
Absolutely.
That is great. So as everyone can hear, we're getting a behind the scenes of how Monique thinks about her business and the guests and getting people into all of these fantastic locations. So now I want to talk about Checked In, your new series on OWN on the 21st. It really gives a behind the scenes look at what it takes to run your businesses. What can we expect from the show? And I really want to know if you had any apprehension about doing a reality show.
Well, let me just say that, I feel like, who gets this opportunity is what I want to first say.
Monique Greenwood. When I saw it, I thought, oh, of course.
I just, I'm still kind of like, wow, is this really happening in a couple of days? It's just, I'm just, feel incredibly, incredibly fortunate and blessed. So Checked In. Checked In is they call it a docu-series,
Mm-hmm.
which is a nice way of saying a reality show. And I think that reality shows have become so synonymous now to, kind of a ratchet kind of a situation where people behave badly. And so I was apprehensive, Elaine, initially about doing a reality show. And I first got approached about the possibility of a reality show 5 or 6 years ago by a number of production companies. And at the time, when I would do kind of preliminary interviews with them for them to determine whether they felt like they could package me for a show, it became very evident for both them and for me that I wasn't their girl. I would get asked questions like, so where do you like to shop? What kind of stores? Like, what do you? And my answer would be like, Home Depot,
right? Because I got to fix this porch or whatever you had to do.
I got to get this toilet working.
Right.
Costco. I got to buy these groceries.
Right.
And they were certainly looking for answers like Chanel or Manolo Blahnik or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
which was so not my life at that point as a small business owner. And so, those didn't work, and I don't think they were supposed to work. And then by the end of last year, the same thing happened. All of a sudden, I got this rash of calls within a week, 6 or 7 different production companies calling saying, hey, we'd like to talk with you. We think you'd make for a great reality show. We'd like to package that. And I thought, how does this happen? What's going on? And one of the development guys from one of these production companies told me, he said, well, what happened was a major network put it out to all the production companies that they were looking to have a reality show, and they all knew that if they could bring that show to the network, that they had a deal, and so there was a checklist basically of what they were looking for. They were looking for a family-owned business, check, preferably of color, check, preferably headed by the woman and the wife or the mother in the family, check. Upscale in nature, check. And the matriarch and the head of the business, outgoing, speaks her mind, and it was like check.
Check.
Right. So that's what happened. We ultimately signed with Lionsgate. They packaged up a little sizzle reel. The initial network that expressed interest wanted to move forward with the pilot, and then they showed it to Oprah, and she wanted to move forward with the pilot. And so we thought, oh my goodness, it's definitely about Oprah, because that's on brand with who we are and what we do. We felt very confident and safe at OWN, knowing that we didn't think we would be exploited as people, as a company, as a family. And so we said, yeah, let's make this happen. And the concept was a show that would basically be a modern day fantasy island. So you might not be old enough, Elaine, to remember Fantasy Island.
No, I don't remember at all. The plane, yes, right, absolutely.
Exactly. Right, and so the people would come on, and Mr. Rourke would make miracles and memories, and so that's what
you're Mrs. Rourke.
I'm Mrs. Rourke. I make miracles and memories. Yep, and so so that was it. Now the network thought that the only people who come to B&Bs are like romantic couples getting away. And while we get a lot of that clientele, we also get a lot of girlfriend groups and a lot of single women who are traveling solo. So for the first season, and I'm saying first season as if there'll be a second, because I'm just putting that out there.
There you go. Claim it.
Right. It's primarily focusing on the couples, because that was their thought about what, who comes to a B&B, although my ends are very different. I just really do get everybody. And so a big part of it, in addition to the behind the scenes operations of a family run business, and all that goes with that, a big part of it is my engagement with my guests who are couples who are coming to celebrate milestones like major anniversaries or someone's birthday, or to try to reconnect the dots in their relationship, because maybe they've lost themselves, or they've lost each other in the crush of life, with trying to hold down jobs or raise children or whatever challenges they're facing. They just haven't had time to disconnect and reconnect. And so they're coming to do that, and we're helping them to do that as well. So the stories of the couples that come are also very pivotal to the show. And it's, I think, probably one of the most authentic, genuine looks at Black love, if you will, that's out there. I mean, the portrayals are so real, and it is real reality, because nothing's manufactured. We are not manufacturing drama. There is drama inherent in running a small business. You don't have to create it. If I'm making pancakes in the morning for 20 guests and I drop the whole plate of 15 on the floor just before it's time to serve, it's drama.
That's drama, right?
I got to figure that out, so anybody who has a business of their own knows that those challenges will happen. And so the other big storyline that runs throughout the show is one that we started talking about at the beginning of our talk, Elaine, about legacy building.
Yes, going to ask you about that.
Yeah. I mean, I have one child, a daughter, Glenn, who is 25, and she is absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm. And, she's the one I think about with everything that I do. When things get tough for me, I will say to myself, I'll remind myself, okay, you're setting this up for Glenn. Okay, you can get through this, because, she's counting on you. And I do those talks to myself. And now that she's 25 and has finished graduate school and has grown up in this business and is very capable and competent, I want to groom her to take over the business, because I already told you I want work for me to be optional. That's what success looks like for me now.
Right.
And so I don't want to have to work this hard next year. I need to be able to count on her. And at the same time, though, she is a millennial who is very passionate about what she wants to do, which is write books. And so we are faced with how to create something that will work for what we both want. And it's really hard because I think she gets my argument about legacy and that I'm counting on her to keep the family business going. And I certainly get her passion for giving her chosen profession a chance. But I think that we have to make it work, that both of those things have to happen, because I don't know, Elaine, I got 10 jobs, so I figure she can have 2, right?
Right. It's so interesting that her interest, though, kind of reflects what your earlier interests were as a writer, her wanting to write. I know she wants to do books, but
for what she's trying to do, Elaine.
I'm trying, Glenn.
She says the same thing too. She's like, "Well, I'm following in your footsteps."
She really is.
Yeah, but you know what? It's not so much even about following in my footsteps as much as it is about, these shoes have been laid out for you. I need you to try them on. And that's all I'm saying. They may be too big and they may be too small and they may cramp your bottom, your baby toe or whatever. I just need you to at least try them on and walk around in them a little bit and see how stylish they are. I want you to give that a chance. And so, we're going to find a way. I just feel confident about that. And I know that I have not been the best example for her of how it is to work in this business, because she looks at my life and she's like, I'm not trying to work that hard. I'm not trying, and I get it. I've kind of spoiled the illusion of what it can be. But she can craft it and create it in her own image. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, because you get to do that.
Right. And we get to see you both have that discussion and that sort of exploration throughout the series. This discussion of, like you said, the shoes are laid out for you. I want you to try them on, and her kind of trying to navigate that, which I would imagine is, I won't say tough, but something that she has to really consider as the only child and the one who would carry on the legacy at this point.
Yes.
Ooh,
yes.
Glenn, the pressure.
I know. The pressure is a
possibility.
And a possibility, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And Elaine, if we look at Black-owned businesses in particular, I mean, we don't have that kind of passing from one generation to the other. It is not something that we have had the ability to do, or the culture to do. I don't know what it is. I mean, outside of a funeral home, or maybe a fast food, soul food restaurant, or maybe a hair salon, we just don't see it happen.
I don't know. I feel like, and of course I don't know this for sure, but a lot of other cultures, I don't think it's a discussion. I shouldn't say discussion. It's a choice. I don't know. It's just like you work in the cleaners with your family, or you work in the whatever, and of course you're going to take this on, or someone in the family is going to take this on and keep it going. I don't know.
Right.
But maybe it has. Say again.
It's definitely an understanding.
It's an understanding.
Yep, it's an understanding. I mean, I have at my Pennsylvania location in the summer, the majority of my guests are Jewish parents who are coming to visit their children in the many camps that surround our area. I mean, these are very upscale camps that they're paying upwards of, $12,000 for a 7-week session. Mm-hmm. And I get to talk with those guests and engage them, and we have wonderful exchanges. And if they're not a doctor or a lawyer, they work for the family business. That's just kind of how it is. And they have amassed tremendous wealth and have created tremendous opportunity for their families, because their grandfather or their father or their great grandfather started a business that they were able to take over and grow. So it's not a question of, starting from scratch, the way it is for so many of our families.
And that's the kind of practice that gets like your name on buildings kind of thing for generations down the line, right?
Absolutely.
Now, is it difficult though, as a mom who did have another career, you're the beginning of this new opportunity for your family as far as hospitality space in particular, or the inns. Is it difficult though, knowing that you have experienced another career, but then you've started this business, to want to give your daughter a chance to make the choice for herself, but then, as you said, sort of swayed her into going down the line of building a legacy? Is it difficult to?
In other words, is it hypocritical? Is that
No,
the
I
word?
would never. No, I'm just
No,
saying it's not like
no.
you're like, well, I was doing this when I was a child, so you have to do. You know what I mean? So I think some
Yeah,
other families have that too. Well, I did it, you
yeah,
do it, that kind
yeah.
of thing.
No, no. Listen. Again,
You're so funny.
encouraging of her in her writing career. I just don't want her to be whatever it is. I don't want her to be one note.
Mm.
Um, and so it's okay. It's no. I want her to be. I am going to buy so many of her books. I talk about her writing all the time. I encourage her. I hook her up any way that I can. I edit whatever she wants me to read. A lot she doesn't want me to read because I know I'm all up in it. Since she does more memoir writing, I
Uh-huh.
know I'm in it. But so I want her to do that. I just believe that she still needs to have her finger on the pulse of what's happening with the family business. She is not an either or proposition. I
It's a
just
both
feel like
and. I was just going to say that.
exactly.
You wanted to experience a both and. Whereas for you, when you start, at first you had a both and, but then you made the either or choice in order to build the business to what it is today.
Exactly, because the business required that, and I'm not going to say that while she's doing both and that the business won't require more attention. And if it does, then we'll identify somebody else who can do that if she can't do that at that given time. Um, Otherwise, I'll be working until I'm 90. But yeah, I think it's going to be okay. I,
Yes.
I don't think either of us is being unreasonable.
I don't think so either. Definitely not hypocritical. And I
Right.
think seeing that, being able to witness that, no matter who we are, but especially for Black families, seeing that on the show will be interesting to just see that conversation, whether we're in that circumstance or not.
Exactly.
So, what would you say, Monique, entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Um, hmm. I don't know that it's taught me anything as a woman. I think it has affirmed me as a woman. It has, affirmed that we are the mothers of invention, that we are creatives that can, figure it out, that we are resilient. That when I've had some challenges in running my business, like opening a bed and breakfast in New Orleans a month before Hurricane Katrina. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that was those were some pretty sour lemons, and I knew I had to do more than make lemonade. I had to make lemon meringue pie. And
Mm-hmm.
so you start to learn your fortitude and your strength and your creativity to problem solve and to make it work, or decide that it doesn't work, and do the pivot as we talked about. So it definitely has taught me that. I will say this, that this is the space I like to be in. That I like to call the shots, and that they may not always be the right call, but I can own the call, and if the call is wrong, I will learn from that. But I like being in that space where I feel like I am the creator of my own destiny.
Mm-hmm. And before we go, being conscious of your time, but I do want to mention something we talked about before we got on the call or before we started the interview. You're also the chair of entrepreneurship at Howard University. So you're teaching other young people how to learn how to call the shots too.
Absolutely. I'm having a great time doing this. My chair is endowed by the Johnson Publishing Company, from John H. Johnson, and being able to help nurture and encourage the next generation of game changers and innovators is an awesome privilege. And I just love sitting there on Wednesdays. I have open door for the students to come in, and they come in with their bright ideas. And the first thing I have to try to do is to give them words and arguments to give to their parents. So now this may be hypocritical, uh, who are, who sent them there to train to be, doctors or lawyers or dentists or engineers. And what they really want to do is have a food truck,
Mm-hmm.
and, and I have to, help them with that argument. And then, but more often than not, they come in so, just so ambitious, which is great. But sometimes their ideas are so big that they're not attainable easily. I'm not going to say they're impossible, but, I try to simplify it and scale it to a point that they can act on it right now, not, one day when. But right now, how do we start building a business right now that then you can grow? So it's been a delight. So yeah. So again, Elaine, I have 10 jobs, as I said.
Right.
So that's why it's hard for me not to, let up on my daughter, who I only just want to have 2 jobs.
I love it. So, in closing, Monique, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Whoa. One person?
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard one, because it really does take a village. And one person. And you know what? I know this is probably, if you ask this question all the time, you may always get this answer, but it would have to be my mother, who is no longer with us on earth, but it lives with me every single day in my head and in my heart. My mom did not have the privilege of going to college or running a business or even having a professional, I'm putting that in air quotes as well, job. But that when you talk about support, there was no greater supporter of anyone, I don't think, than my mother. My mom literally drove me to school every single day from kindergarten until I graduated college, every single day, because she didn't want me to miss a thing, and she considered that my job was to go get my education, go make my grades, she would say. And so I always got perfect attendance. I could be sick, in elementary school, and she'd take me and she'd wait until I go in there and they take the roll, and she said, I'll be sitting right here, wait until they take attendance, and you come on back out, and I'll take you on home and get you some soup and rub your chest down with some Vicks,
Right.
She was. And as I progressed in my education and had to do reports and papers and things that were way beyond where she had gone in school, she still would be there to support me. And that support would look like me sitting at the dining room table working on a project, and my mom sitting in her chair in the living room, and she would not go to bed until I was done. And sometimes that was 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, literally. And she would not leave that chair. She would not go to bed. And I would say, Ma, go to bed. I'm fine. I got it. She said, no, I just want to read the paper,
Mm-hmm.
but she was never going to let me feel like I was on a sinking ship without somebody else there with an oar. She was not going to get up. I was never going to be left alone. She was going to be there to support me. So, she has been that for me, and I feel grateful that I had her in my life and that she was there to support me, and I hope that I've done the same kind of been the same kind of support for my own daughter. And I think that for those who have not had the blessing of a parent to do that for you, excuse me, you need to, even now at this very moment, find somebody who is going to be in your corner and have your back in just the same way, and make sure that you're doing that for somebody else, because support is sexy.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Monique. Now tell us how we can support you. Tell everyone website, social media, and of course, where to see the show checked in when it premieres
Absolutely.
on the 21st.
Okay, so we're located on our website address is akwaaba.com. That's AKWAABA.com. I'm behind on all this social media stuff. We have a Instagram, I guess that's Akwaaba Inns, and my Twitter handle is Monique Akwaaba, and the television show Checked In premieres this Tuesday, November 21st at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on the OWN network. And then our regularly scheduled air dates are on Saturdays. So we'll be on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and then again on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and every Saturday after that for our full 7 episodes.
And on Saturday, what time is that? Is that check your local listings?
That's at 10 o'clock as well,
Oh.
Eastern Standard Time, and 9 o'clock Central.
Excellent. Monique, I'm so proud of you. This is just, as I told you in text messages, I think I was screaming on a text message. I'm just so happy for you, and that more people than who have already experienced you and who you are as a person, and then what you've created with the Akwaaba Inns will get to be able to witness that through the show. So I'm just excited about all that is to come.
Thank you so much, Elaine. I appreciate your support and allowing me to share a bit of my story. And I certainly hope that your listeners will tune in, because we think we have a story to tell through Checked In. And we want to be here again next year this time.
That's right. Now, before you go, before I ask you a last piece of advice, as I always do, before we let you go, I do want to say thank you to you. I don't know if I've told you this before, but I definitely want to say it publicly. Thank you to you for giving me a chance and for seeing me and seeing something in me, as I mentioned earlier on in our conversation, that some parts of me I didn't see in myself, but you gave me a chance, told me what to do in order to be successful, and you really supported me early on in my career, and really just set me on a path that I couldn't imagine as a journalist, as a writer, as an editor. And I always tell people I came of age as a young woman there at Essence under women like you who are really inspirational to me. So thank you, Monique, for being here.
Oh, it was a pleasure. And I'm so proud of you as well, Elaine. I want you to continue to set your course and define success on your own terms, because we talked a little bit about that. Success is subjective, or at least it should be. What rocks my world may feel like a rock in your shoe, and that's a good thing. So keep doing your thing, Elaine. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Oh my goodness. Oh boy, what is that? I'm gonna just say, live a luscious life. We don't want it to be dried up. We don't want it to be, flat. We want it juicy and luscious. And it's your job to do that.
Live a luscious life. Monique Greenwood, thank you. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Monique Greenwood. For more about her and about Akwaaba Inns, because you want to go visit supportissexypodcast.com and just search Monique. Monique. Her show notes page will pop up with all of the links, all of the resources, everything that we talked about today on this episode, even a little link to Fantasy Island if you're not old enough to remember that. Supportissexypodcast.com and search Monique. Also, if you're listening to this in real time, be sure to tune in tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Oprah Winfrey Network to see the premiere of Monique in her new series, Checked In. I know it's going to be fantastic. And before you go, I just want to say this was a great opportunity for me, because you don't often get the chance to really thank your mentors, or at least I don't often get the chance, or maybe I don't take the chance, I should say. But it was great to be able to take the time, take the opportunity to publicly thank Monique for all that she's done for me, being a mentor, being an example, being such a boss and doing it so well, and showing an example for me of what that could look like. And as she mentioned in this episode, an example for her daughter for what that could look like. None of us gets it perfect, but just seeing her and the way she works and how she continues to grow and do so many different things. It's so inspirational still. So having that opportunity to say thank you was really powerful for me. So for you, if you have any mentors or anybody that you work closely with who has helped you out, who supports you, support is sexy, make sure to take the opportunity to say thank you to them. It will mean the world to them, and it will feel good for you. All right. So thank you so much for listening, as always. And now you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.